Yes, we're discussing beards as the program gets underway because the bearded charmer himself, Joe Freeman, joins us now from the Oregonian and OregonLive.com. Mike Barrett, Mike Rice. I had kind of a beard until yesterday. I was out of town for a while. I just kind of let it go. It shocked me how gray it was. I hadn't had a beard since.
Now, do you put color in that? It looks real dark.
Not yet. I'm still young and vibrant. Okay. Rice, I don't need to go there yet.
Do the women like beards?
The wife does.
Oh, really?
Okay. That's all that really matters.
So when it does get salt and peppery, will you just kind of let it go?
Probably.
I was going for a Sean Connery kind of a thing.
Sure.
I ended up looking like Uncle Jesse. So that wasn't so good. So off it came.
I look old enough as it is, so I don't need something that makes me look older.
See, I think you ought to go with
take that wild man to a whole
like a Dumbledore kind of a thing.
I have two hairs coming out for a foot. And what,
Yeah, but you got to maintain. You got to do some manscaping. Now, how often do you?
Now, I usually trim. Like during the season, I'll keep it professional looking. But I haven't.
That thing they have on TV. You buy for $1.98.
No, I've got mine was $2.98. I went for the middle, not the top tier.
You went on Craigslist and got a used.
Yeah.
If you haven't guessed, this is Trailblazers Courtside. We do have some content. I mean, we're going to kick the tires.
Let's not get carried away now.
We do have a little content, but there's going to be times when we stray.
I can confirm that Mike Rice has some new business cards.
Go ahead and show those closer. I'm going to get his cell phone number off of this.
So we're going to be official this year.
Yeah. Is your cell phone on your cell phone number on your cards?
Yes, it is. Unfortunate.
People are going to be doing screen grabs of that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
But
I'll answer the call.
That doesn't mean I have to give them out.
No, I know.
They'll stay just like that.
Well, I meant that Joe held it up to the camera, but that's okay. I don't think they're going to.
There'll be some pausing at home on the old DVR for that one.
He barely answers my calls, so I don't think he'll be picking up for any unknown numbers. Joe, how you doing?
I am doing excellent. I'm doing excellent. I'm refreshed. I'm relaxed. It's been beautiful Portland summer.
Hasn't it? You're already refreshed? How long does it take you to kind of unwind from all the travel and everything?
It takes a couple weeks before, because mentally you think, I've got something to do.
You're kind of bouncing around the walls.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling. You're not sure. You feel like, because you don't get a day off for a couple months there, especially going through the playoffs.
Right.
Now, at the start of July, do you start looking forward to the summer league? Or?
Usually, yeah. And by now, in past seasons, we'll have the NBA pre-draft workouts going on. So they'll have started cycling guys in for the draft, but with no draft picks at all this year. No workouts this year. So
do you think, though, they will get themselves into the draft, maybe the second round? I mean, I think it's hard to believe there's not going to be at least a second round pick.
Well, ordinarily, I would say the combination of Neil O'Shea, who likes to be active, and Paul Allen's love of the draft, I would say yes. But does this team really need a second round draft pick?
And
I agree.
Do you really need to get younger?
I made this point 2 weeks ago.
And if you look at, they haven't tried to sneak anybody in to work out or anything. If that's the case.
But you don't need – they're at those – workouts are different than they were 5, 8
Even
years
4 years. Yeah.
It's not like it used to be where you flew in this 30 guys over. Remember we used to go to those every other day.
Well, agents are controlling it so much more than they ever have.
And they have these centralized workouts where they fly everybody to one spot because you don't have that much control of it anyway.
Yeah.
And when they are with you, then the agent will say, well, he's not allowed to work out against anybody else. Or you can only go 4-on-4.
And really, exactly, they control every physical aspect of it. But the greater impact, and we've seen this over the years, going back to my first year in 2007 with Durant and Oden, is that you want the guy to come in and you want to interview him. You want to talk to him. You want to take him out to dinner. You want to show him the practice facility and everything else. You want to get the vibe off of him as a person. And Damian Lillard, they loved Damian Lillard's interview. Right. That was one of the things that clinched it, how he interacted with Paul and the coaching staff and everything. And so, or actually, I guess he came in before the coaches were in, but with the front office and everything. So that was, as much of anything, the biggest benefit from that. So that's what the Blazers and all these teams lose by not bringing in guys in. Because I think you get 16 or 17 guys at Chicago that you can sit down and interview with. But outside of that, you don't get a lot of interaction with
And
these guys.
like you said, do they really need to get younger? No. I mean, if you buy a pick, what kind of pick is it going to be?
But if you can get, you're not going to have any spots. But if you can get early in the second round, I mean, that's where you picked up a Will Barton, you picked up an Alan Crabb. I mean, there are guys who are impact players in the second round. It does happen.
We have Will Barton and Alan
exactly,
Crabb.
And that's what I was going to say. You already have that guy with.
We have those guys.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. I think what this team needs right now more than anything is some guys that can play immediately.
Yes.
I mean, particularly if you lose Mo Williams comes this season, you need someone who can come in and replace him. You don't need another Alan Crabb who's going to have to wait a year, maybe more, before he's ready. So
okay, but if there is a year to be needing a backup point guard, this is the year.
True.
There are a lot of backup
candidates.
point guards who are out there available, and we've kind of ran through a lot of them. We're watching one of them in Patty Mills.
Yeah.
He's a free agent. I mean, we mentioned Sean Livingston, Kirk Heinrich, Steve
Collinson,
Darren Collinson,
Blake. There's,
DJ Augustine.
There's a look at the list for those of you watching on Comcast Sportsnet. That's what's available out there. And if you're talking about, Mo Williams had a great season, and he said he wanted to be here. But if Mo wants, let's say, hypothetically, something like the full mid-level, do you do that, and do you do it for 3? I mean, what do you go out and get? And even an Aaron Brooks made $1 million last year. What's he going to command? Sean Livingston had a nice year with.
How about Gravis?
He's a bargain. Vasquez, I mean, goes up to Toronto where
his combination of defense and the ability to facilitate. I mean, he's not a huge scorer, but his
and Heinrich is kind of that guy.
Yeah.
You wish that he was a little more durable, perhaps. He's had some difficulties, but he's a guy who comes off the bench. And if there were times, which you said on the air, and it was pretty obvious at times, when you have Damian and Mo in at the same time, you are lacking some defense. So if you get a guy who maybe is a contrast to that, like a Heinrich, is that a better combination coming off the bench where you can play Damian at some 2 with a guy who can handle the ball?
I think you have more options to do different things. If you look at the series that's going on right now, no one made adjustments before Game 1. They, threw it in. Okay, Game 1 happened. San Antonio won. Now the adjustments were made by Miami. Could the Blazers make adjustments like Miami did on how they're going to play the pick and roll? Become more physical, switching more. The Blazers did it one way because that was their personnel. They just didn't have the personnel. So you need a more physical point guard backing up Lillard. And, you looked at the list right there. I'm sure there's a couple of guys on that list that could help the Blazers because the adjustments Spoelstra made – he could make because he had the personnel. I mean, he reaches in for a Rashard Lewis who hadn't played at all, but he fits what they needed on offense. And if they needed something on defense, he would reach out and get somebody for that.
And one thing you need to keep in mind, too, with the list of guys they showed is whoever the Blazers bring in needs to not only be able to run a team, in a second unit, but he needs to be able to play alongside Damian Lillard.
Right.
And that was one thing that Mo did that was unique to him, and that he could do both of those things. And so when you look at that list, ideally, if you're looking perfect world here, you want a guy who can defend better than Mo defended, but yet do a lot of the same things he did alongside and independent of Damian Lillard.
Well, and if you could get Mo to accept a reasonable contract, you'd have Mo and you'd have the 2 exceptions. So you could go out and do, even become a better basketball team, but it all depends on what Mo wants in his contract and for how many years.
You think he'll be back?
I don't see it. I really don't. And there's a couple reasons. First of all, if he wants a 3-year deal, which he said he wanted at exit interviews, I have a hard time seeing that happen because you look at the entire makeup of this roster, and I'll take you back to a summer ago. The way that they constructed this and the way that Neil went about everything he did was he kind of set a 2-year arc for this team. If you look at the roster up and down, most of the key guys are their contracts are done after this season, or after the next season, excuse me. So he wanted this to see what he had out of this group by molding, adding Robin Lopez to the mix, adding CJ and some of these young guys to the young core he already had, see what they do in 2 years. If they pan out and things go as well as they did last year, then you bring a lot of them back and you accentuate it here and there. You're not going to bring an older guy who's looking for his last year or his last big deal to be your only guy along with some young guys that's left on that roster. And that's, if you're bringing him in for 3 years, if he wants 3 years, I don't see that happening. But at the money he makes, it's not outlandish.
No.
For what he gives you, that's part one of what I was getting at, is if not at 3 years. But also the second part is when the Blazers signed Mo last summer, it was obviously very late. And they really wooed him, and they said, look, man, this is going to be your show. You're going to be the 6th man. You're going to guarantee X amount of minutes. You're going to be able to flourish.
And that's why he came here, not Memphis. Memphis thought they had him.
Right.
It was done.
Exactly. next year, that's not going to be the case. You're not going to be giving him these assurances because you have a guy in CJ that you want to bring along and play more. You have a guy in Will Barton who made tremendous strides, and certainly over what we've seen him develop as much as anyone, maybe him and Joel Freeland, as anybody over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So you're going to want a larger role for this, and you have a lot invested in those guys, and particularly in CJ. And so it's an interesting balance of trying to mix these guys into what you're going to do next year, and you're not going to be able to guarantee Mo as many minutes and the same role necessarily as you did this year. So,
and I think Mo knows that.
Well, if he can accept it, then that's a different story. If he's cool with it, that's a different story.
I don't know if he would be, because you can see CJ is ready to make that next step. So, Mo would be a little nervous with that, I think.
I think so, too. And one thing that Mo made clear at his exit interview is he's at the twilight of his career. This is his last opportunity to get a 3-year deal, and so I think his number one priority is going to get that. Now, I don't know if a team's going to give him a 3-year deal. I don't know what the landscape's going to be, but I'd be highly surprised if it was the Blazers.
Well, and there's some other guys on that list, too, that maybe are approaching their final contracts. So it'll be interesting to see, and I knew we'd find topics other than beards. Not that there's anything wrong with beards.
Plenty of beard talk
We
to
may
come.
revisit the beard conversation, but for now, we're talking free agents. When we come back, let's talk the coaching situation in the NBA, because, you go back to early last season, everybody said, what are the Nets thinking hiring Jason Kidd, a guy who had no coaching experience? Well, guess what? It just happened again. Today, the New York Knicks have a new head coach. We'll talk about that and more when Trailblazers Courtside continues. Thank you, guys. My son Jack is 9 today, so that's getting my daughter who's left. Yes, I left a birthday party to come in and do Trailblazers Courtside. And by the way, Blaze showed up at his party today.
Is that right?
Yeah, and if you haven't done that, and Blaze can come to your party too. Go to trailblazers.com. And this was not a drop for Blaze, but it works out nicely because kids go crazy.
Oh, he's the best.
It was fantastic. So the second party he's been to, and this time I think he was at his 6th or something, and I had a thing where I hid Blaze.
Oh,
then,
kids had to be nervous.
Scared the Jesus out of him.
I had Blaze under a tarp in the garage, and the kids thought the presents were under there, and Blaze comes out, with silly string, and half the kids ran to the hills. Man.
Did they come back?
Scared. They came back after they're down the street. People are corralling them back to the party. This year was a little different.
Because I've seen Blaze at state fairs, and some of the younger kids.
You and I, we were in the Dalles one time doing something, and Blaze went and stuck his head in a kid's stroller, and the kid wanted to get out of there. So
he's a menacing creature.
Yeah, and Rice has a little bit of a demented sense of humor where he loves that stuff. He's watch these kids. And Blaze would stick his head in, and he'd just get a huge kick out of it when the kid just would absolutely scream. But anyway, welcome back to Trailblazers Courtside. Mike Barrett, Mike Rice, Joe Freeman from the Oregonian with us here, and Joe posted an article earlier today. You can check it out at OregonLive.com, talking about some of the Blazers back getting set for Summer League. And before we get into the coaching news, which I kind of teased before the break, are you surprised the Summer League roster is going to be as robust as it is? I mean, it's a great thing, but some people think, okay, you watch the playoffs, and a contributor, especially in the latter part of the playoffs for Portland, was Will Barton, and Joel Freeland was a rotation player this last season, and some teams use the Summer League only for up-and-comers and guys you've never heard of. But this is a good way to utilize the Summer League, especially for guys like C.J. McCollum, who you really want to see get some minutes. For big guys, it hasn't always been that. Joel Freeland, Myers Leonard will be there. Thomas Robinson's a bit of a surprise, as is Will Barton, but it's a good thing.
But remember, the Blazers didn't use the D-League. So this is their time to look at these guys that they think is going to improve. And, it's, like you said, long as Will Barton doesn't try to take over.
When has Will Barton ever not tried to take over?
I'm sure he'll just relax and sit back.
Yeah, he's just going to hang out on the bench. I think the benefits of it aren't necessarily those 10 days in Vegas, but the mini camp before and this month right now.
Yeah.
And we saw this last year. Joel Freeland and Will Barton in particular credited the work they did in Portland in June for the progress they made in the regular season. And we saw what a benefit that was for them. Now, it didn't help guys such as Victor maybe as much as other guys. So it can go either way. And I would be surprised if all these guys played in every game in Vegas.
Yeah.
But Vegas is crazy. The best example I have of how meaningless the results in Las Vegas are is the first summer league I covered. It was the one that featured Jared Bayless and Nicholas Batum.
Jared was
and
MVP.
Jared Bayless was a world beater, an MVP, and I use this example every time. And Nicholas Batum lost and over his head, couldn't hardly speak that good of English, and was timid and was what the heck is going on. Next thing you know, in training camp, Nicholas is starting as a rookie, and Bayless, never really pans out. So the gameplay isn't necessarily reflective or indicative of what you might see going forward, but getting the guys together for a month in June, however often they work out this month, I think is more beneficial than necessarily the time they'll spend in Vegas.
Well, because in the MVP, Lillard won co-MVP, but the co-MVP was Josh Selby.
Right, exactly.
Where's he? Fine, got an NBA career on an NBA team, but it again, as you said, it adds more evidence to the fact that it didn't, it doesn't mean everything.
Even though it's not a big guys league, they never touch the ball. A guy like Joel Myers.
Joel Freeland?
Myers Leonard.
Oh.
Myers Leonard.
Three guys in.
Yeah,
Joel's Myers Leonard.
They got all those first names.
I understand.
It's taken me 2 years to get that set.
My name's Joe Freeman, and I cover Joel Freeland. I don't want to hear about
I'm sure that's happened
names.
a little bit, yes.
But Myers Leonard can really benefit, as you see, he can go underneath and demand the ball, and the Blazer coaching staff's good enough that they can benefit Myers Leonard by getting him the ball occasionally, let the guards know that, hey, Will, we know you can get your shot. Now can you get the ball into a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge in the regular season or Myers Leonard here in the summer league? So this can really benefit Myers Leonard.
CJ and Myers,
yes,
I think are the two guys, and Allen to a certain degree too.
Yeah.
But we know what Will can do. He needs to improve, obviously, but we have an idea of what he can do. Same with Thomas. But more than anything, getting these guys playing, and that's what Myers said in his exit interview is, man, I need to play.
Yeah.
And so if he can go out and play 4 to 8 games or whatever it's going to be, depending upon how long they go or how far they go, that's games. And so him playing in that and the preparation leading up to it is exactly what you want. But I want to see CJ as much as anybody. And last year he didn't really have a guy to help him handle the ball. Will kind of filled in that role, and Will's not really a point guard, obviously. So I'd like to see. I'll be interested to see who they have with him that can help him handle the ball. But I'll be watching CJ and Myers as much as anyone.
Will thinks he's LeBron James when he has the ball. LeBron but looks for people. Mm-hmm. Will looks for his shot. Yeah. So it's tough playing with Will in the summer league.
I mentioned the coaching situation in the NBA. Derek Fisher given a job by the New York Knicks today. He is their new head coach. He goes from playing to coaching, like, as I mentioned, Jason Kidd did. Your thoughts on the Derek Fisher hiring?
The only way, he's an intelligent guy. He was the president of the Players Union.
Okay.
So he's bright. But the reason he's getting this job is Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson wants to control that team. He wants them to run the triangle offense. They're going to hire Rambis. They're going to hire Walton. All the guys that ran that triangle in the Lakers, they're going to be around him. Phil Jackson will be at the practices. They'll be asking Phil, now, what do you think about this? So he'll be more than a president or a general manager. He'll be in there with the coaching togs on. And that's why Fisher got the job.
And because Steve Kerr turned him down.
Yes, because Steve Kerr probably was a little leery. He's another bright guy that I won't be running this team. Phil Jackson will. And when he got that great offer from Golden State.
Well, and Steve,
no-brainer.
He lives in San Diego.
Yeah, it's a perfect match for him.
His wife
team.
Why go live in New York?
Yeah, but that was the offer. He had a good offer.
Yeah.
But, the Golden State, it was but the reason Phil wanted him, he'd run the triangle.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, I'd lie to Phil. I'd say, Phil, I'm going to run that triangle. I know every aspect of this triangle. And then as soon as I wrote the contract out, and I said, Phil, I don't want to see you at my practice.
It'll be interesting to see how a guy like Carmelo Anthony, how he feels about Derek Fisher. I mean, you would think that Phil would have communicated with Carmelo along the way about these possibilities.
And if he didn't, won't that tell you everything?
Exactly.
About his future in New York.
That's going to be the real big thing, how Lala accepts Fisher and the whole works, because that's a weird situation, the New York Knicks. And, I mean, they got some really wacko people on that team. So
I bet you that, and we don't know because we're not around Derek Fisher and we haven't been, but I bet you he had a lot of Earl Watson in him the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
And he played a bit more than Earl, but I bet there's some similarities. And you wouldn't be surprised or in awe if Earl were to get a coaching job in the next couple of years, would you? I mean, you could see that. He'd be a great coach.
And Fisher's that way.
Right.
He really goes out. He's for the team. The way he played is the right way to play in the NBA. He's a tough, hard-nosed So
works hard.
I would think he's going to be successful. And I'm not saying that, that's the only reason Phil's hired him. He sees that he can be a successful coach.
Let me ask you a basic question then, because with Cleveland, we're hearing Billy Donovan. They're trying to woo some of these guys who have, teams have attempted to
Calipari?
woo. Yeah, teams have attempted to woo before. Why then in the NBA, because people think, okay, good college coach, he'll be a good pro coach. Doesn't work out that way all the time. Why is it that a Derek Fisher going to New York would be their choice above somebody like Billy Donovan or John Calipari?
And I'll tell you 100% why. Fisher understands how to take a lesser role in his playing career. He always played second fiddle to Kobe or whoever the big shot was, playing Durant, Westbrook. In the NBA, the coaches aren't the ones that get the publicity. They make in college ball, on your media guide, it has the head coach picture. As bad as I was always on the media guide.
That's a scary.
That's all I need to hear.
That's right.
Wow.
And that's Calipari to a T. He is the man in Kentucky. In the NBA, the man is Durant, Westbrook, and Fisher understands that. Fisher will control it. He knows what NBA players are about. And so, the college guys don't understand that when they come into the NBA. They're so used to having complete control. Fisher won't, he'll know when to rest them, when not to rest them. So it's almost like a different sport, coaching one. I coached for 20 years in Division I. And when I came to the pros, I went, they're not practicing. They're not, because I was used to practicing every day, 3 hours, work things out. Spoelstra is the perfect coach for basketball because he can make adjustments that will suit his team the next day. Whereas in college, they need 2 weeks to work on something.
And he realizes that LeBron's the man. He's not the man.
Hey, LeBron comes to him and said, hey, coach, Spoelstra's listening.
Yeah.
If he went to Calipari would say, get down at the end of the bench. I'll tell you when to, and that.
I don't think Calipari really has a desire. Does he? I mean, I don't know him, but I don't see him having a desire.
Why would he? He's been there before.
And he's in a great situation for a college coach. He gets.
Hey, believe me, there is no one in the world like a head coach at Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
There's no place in the world where the adulation, no way he was leaving Kentucky. He was just letting everybody know.
This is an agent saying, if we get your name floated out there, it's going to get you a few more years, a few more bucks.
dollars. Yeah.